Hi, this is Curt, and welcome to another edition of Fire Law Roundup.
This is the most interesting case we're going to talk about today. This is really interesting, and I like comparing this case with other states because this is insane. So let's go to Connecticut. We're here. The public information officer went to a scene with a camera, takes pictures, took a picture of a scene, right? And they're then charged with a crime. Now, forget the fact they're charged with a crime because they actually did violate the law in my reading of it, but the law is insane. I don't know what your take is, but let me look at the law. So what the law says, it's an either or. Right. It says any peace officer or firefighter, here we probably have the firefighter, or EMT, paramedic, etc., who responds to a request for medical or other assistance and in the performance of her duties, right? Other than in the performance of her duties. This is, I think, the saving language. So while not in the performance of their duties, takes photographic or digital images of the person without their consent. That's one. Or while not in the performance of their duties, then transmits, disseminates, or otherwise makes available to a third person the photographic or digital image, right? So basically this is, if you're a firefighter and it's not your job, or an EMT or a paramedic, whatever, and it's not your job to take pictures on a scene, and you do so, either you take the picture, you could be criminally liable to a fine or imprisonment up to a year, or if you distribute, right, you receive a picture and you transmit it, disseminate it, etc. So what's amazing, of course, to these, as you point out, this is the public information officer. This is exactly the scope of his duty. Right now, they may get into what is the duty of a PIO. Normally, the duty of a PIO, I guess you could argue, like in the police side, is to report, not to take images and say, hey, here's what we're doing, right? But here, that's the PIO's job. And this went on for a long time. Finally, the charges, I believe, are dropped, right? But I can't imagine, as you rightfully point out, I cannot imagine what this person went through being criminally charged for doing their job.
Well, I've had the opportunity to speak to Steve, and my hat's off to him. I think he exhibited a great deal of patience with what I would consider to be incompetent police work and incompetent prosecution. There is no justification for what the state of Connecticut put him through in this case. At best, there's an ambiguity in the law. To me, it's very clear. He took the pictures, and as you went through the law, folks can go on the blog and read the law. He took the pictures in the performance of his duties as the PIO. He shared the pictures in the performance of his duties as the PIO. He didn't post them on his personal Facebook page. He didn't forward them to a friend or whatever. He did exactly what the law requires. And you're talking about having to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt. You're talking about charging somebody with a criminal offense, which maybe a prosecutor can say, oh, well, that's no big deal. That's like, maybe to you and I, we say, oh, a house fire is no big deal. Well, it's a big deal to the person whose house is on fire, and it's a big deal to charge somebody with a criminal offense. There's all sorts of implications when you charge somebody, including, and you and I are both, Second Amendment advocates, but that can jeopardize your ability to carry. You have to, very cavalier attitude by the police and the prosecution in this case. And I think they both ought to be called to task for that. That's to me, this situation is unforgivable. And I hope to have Steve on one of my podcasts or vlogs in the near future to discuss what he and his family went through.
That's a good point, because I often tell people and I think we had it on our last or a couple times ago, I talk about people have no idea what it's like to go through a lawsuit. Yeah. It is grueling, and nobody should want to go through the discovery and all that, but a criminal prosecution is different. But, it's almost a malicious prosecution, because you got to figure out, the only question here, was he in the performance of his duties or not? And all that takes is one letter from the chief, right? One phone call to the chief saying, hey, is this the guy's job? Was he paid? Is this in his job description? Has he done this before, right? What is his job?
Wouldn't you think the police and prosecutor would want to know that before you put handcuffs on somebody?
Right.
You know, that would be part of your investigation.
If there was an investigation versus a slap, you know, a slapstick kind of Keystone Cop maneuver where they just say, oh, we're just going to arrest you because we want to.
Yeah, just terrible. Just terrible.
Yeah. So I feel badly for the guy, and I think it would be interesting to hear. But obviously this is just bad police work, and I don't know how this happened, but just
let me just take a 50,000-foot view. I want to take a step back and take that 50,000-foot view. There's 4 states that have laws like this. Yours is one of them. New York recently is the most recent addition to it, but we've got New Jersey. Connecticut was actually the first. New Jersey was the second. California and New York. Okay. To me, laws like this represent a failure of leadership in the fire, police, and EMS organizations, because the chiefs have failed to manage this problem effectively. They've permitted this to happen to the point where the legislature feels we have to do something. The police chiefs, the fire chiefs, the chiefs of EMS, they have failed to manage their people. And if they can't get this kind of picture taking, inappropriate, and I don't mean Steve's picture taker, but I mean inappropriate picture taking, inappropriate sharing to stop, then we as the legislature are going to fix it. And this is the result. And, you know, I use this, folks who've been in my classes before on digital imagery will recognize it. But when I first got on Providence, one of the chiefs had been, he was part of the Greatest Generation, and, you know, had been a soldier in World War II, hit the beach in Normandy. And, but he had a saying, okay, and it had nothing to do with digital imagery. We didn't even know what digital imagery was back in 1979, okay? But we were talking about something that was going on, and he said, listen, what folks don't seem to understand is that we have to keep our own house clean. If we don't keep our own house clean, the legislature is going to come in and keep it clean for us. Right. And actually, he was talking about the fire chief, but he was talking about the way things operate at the station. He said, we either keep our own house clean or the chief's going to come in and clean it for us. And we're probably not going to like the way the chief wants to keep the house clean. So let's keep our house clean. Again, he wasn't talking about housework, but he's just talking about the nonsense that can happen, that if we can manage things at a station level, the chief isn't going to have to come in. And it's the same principle here with the legislature. If the fire departments and police departments and EMS agencies can manage the picture taking, then the state legislature doesn't feel the need to come in. But if we don't, you can expect that you're going to have stupid laws like this enacted.
Yeah, but although I got to tell you, in some sense, it's not just about our own house, though, right? Because it's about the people we can't necessarily control, the off-duty people or the mutual aid people, but it's people who may not be under our control at that time come in off-duty. And, you know, I was just working with a department in Maryland. I obviously can't mention their name, and we're working on their digital imagery policy. And they're like, well, but people come all the time and they take pictures. And, you know, sometimes we allow them to stand inside the, you know, medium zone, right? Not the cold zone, not the hot zone, but the warm zone. And I'm like, you can't do that. You can't grant someone access and come take pictures, right? In that the public couldn't otherwise get access to. You just can't do that. And he's like, well, if we don't, they're going to take pictures of everything, whether we let them or not. I'm like, you know what? Then that's on them. But you facilitating them taking pictures, but that was them trying to control the problem. Right. And because they recognize there's a problem with off-duty personnel coming to a scene, taking pictures for the hell of it. And here's kind of my question. So now you have an off-duty personnel. Mm-hmm. This law applies as well to off-duty personnel, right? Showing up, taking a picture. Doesn't apply to the public.
No, it can't. It can't. And I would say an off-duty member has a First Amendment right to take pictures.
Well,
and
then let's look at the law.
This law could not be applied to someone who's not on duty. It could only be applied to someone who is on duty. That would be, and that was, you know, Steve got himself one of the top First Amendment lawyers to help out with this case in the country. And that was considered to be one of the issues here. And I think if they had tried to prosecute someone who is not a firefighter or an off-duty firefighter, they would have run into a problem with the First Amendment.
And I guess the law in this section, they say if the first responder responds to a request to provide medical or other assistance, right? So they're putting him in on duty, presumably. I'm assuming that's why they're trying to say, you're right, you respond while on duty to a request to provide medical or other assistance. That's to probably challenge or make clear this isn't just, right? This is in the workplace, not to every member of the public.
This is the problem when we don't manage our own problems and somebody tries to fix our problems for us. And again, I'm speaking to the chiefs out there. Don't wait till you have a problem. There's already plenty of cases where fire departments have gotten themselves in trouble. There's some cases I can point to you where fire chiefs lost their jobs because of the picture taking and sharing that happened by subordinates. So, you know, you need to have a digital imagery policy. We need to educate our firefighters, but also our officers, and the officers need to understand the risk to the organization and maybe to them of not properly managing this problem. Or we're going to see more, we'll have all 50 states that have stupid laws like this.
Yeah. And I get the point of it. You know, I know we say it's stupid, whatever. I get the point of it. It just shouldn't have to come to this, right? Be respectful.
It shouldn't, you know.
What I tell people is, it's same with HIPAA. This isn't your emergency, right? This isn't your situation. What you're taking pictures of isn't yours just because you respond to it, right? So somebody's privacy isn't now your privacy to flaunt to the public, right? If you want to take a picture of yourself doing something without the patient, hey, maybe that's fine, maybe not. But you put the patient here, they didn't ask to be, right? Just because they're involved in a bad situation, fire, medical emergency, car accident, whatever, doesn't mean they want to be put out to the public. So I don't know what mentality that firefighters and ourselves have to say, oh, I went to this person, I'm a public servant, so I get to put it on my Facebook page. I think insane thinking is that.
We don't recognize, and I think one of the things I try to do in teaching is to kind of give sort of an analogy that removes us from what we do, because sometimes we're so close to something we can't really be objective about it. So here's let me give you an example, okay? The cable company, you have a problem with your cable, okay? The cable company guy comes into your house and is working, running upstairs, running downstairs, checking wires, okay? In the meantime, he's taking pictures of things that are going on in your house.
Right.
And then the next thing you know, all these pictures are showing up on social media. You would be outraged, absolutely positively outraged, okay? What's the difference? Because you have a badge and a uniform?
Right.
There's no difference, okay? And again, it's about education, okay? Folks have got to be educated on this. They got to kind of think it through and, you know, behave accordingly.
Yeah. Well, like you said, if we don't clean up our own house, someone's going to do it.
Somebody's going to do it for us, man.
Yep.